So, a long day of flights yesterday, 3 flights. It wasn't until we were at Athens airport and waiting for the flight to Lesbos that there was really anything, noticeably different from, flying on holiday somewhere. And we met two young men from Zurich who were coming as volunteers into one of the camps. And I also spoke with a man from Oxfam in the Netherlands, and he was going to one of the camps for a week, and had an interesting discussion with him. Today has been our first full day, and we're not due to connect with Starfish until tomorrow morning, Wednesday. So today we set off to go to one of the warehouses near where we are, to help kind of unpack stuff, sort clothes and so on. But actually when we got there, they were incredibly quiet, and they also had now got in a system where local women were working with them to do some of that work. So we went on to another place where there's a couple who've been living in Lesbos for many years, and have responded to the need for clothes and support, and they're affiliated with an organisation called A Drop in the Ocean, and we were working there. Actually spent most of the time sorting out shoes, which was okay. So we got a system going and got shoes sorted into different sizes and different boxes. But in the meantime, I met a woman called Olga, who is a volunteer, but she's also a journalist, and had some really interesting conversation with her. She came out here in October, and in fact was here when a ship with 300 people on capsized, and there was some lives lost. And she spoke with me about how traumatic that was for her, that she arrived very, very shortly before that happened, and she only sort of realised the week after that she'd been in shock, and that in fact she had no preparation for that shock, for that trauma. So I was kind of thinking about that this evening, and thinking that actually we're fortunate. Things are quiet right now. So we've sort of had a day of getting a feel for the place, and having a bit of a kind of slow introduction to the island and to the different aspects of what's happening here. The woman that we're renting our rooms from is obviously lives in Lesbos, is a very articulate, intelligent woman. She's worked for tourism, and so we had an opportunity this morning to talk with her, and she gave us some nice food and drink, and she talked about what this last year has been like, living very close to where many of the refugees have been coming ashore in their thousands. And she talked about, in the summer what it was like, sitting out on the terrace and just watching people in their thousands walking through the area, that she lives in. And in the summer there was a camp developed next to the school, which was okay because the kids weren't in school. Something like 1,500 people were living there with no real facilities. I mean, it was a short-term camp, but nevertheless it was enormous numbers in, not a particularly organised way. And so when the kids went back to school in September, they asked for the camp, the people to be moved, and ultimately they actually had to go to court to do that. So I think one of the things I got from her was, how the locals have struggled with some of the challenges and some of the trauma that they felt. So that, I don't think I'd thought about that very much. So that was quite eye-opening, really. But nevertheless, a very welcoming woman, very, very hospitable. And I guess what I feel right now after only 24 hours is, the complexity of the situation. And also right now being a volunteer here amongst many, many other volunteers, many of them very young. And this evening we drove along what's called the dirt road, which is the road along the bit of coast where the majority of the boats have been coming in. And there's people there, there's lifeguards, there's camps, there's people on watch, and they'll be, on rotas all night watching out for boats coming from Turkey, which when you drive along there, you can see the coast of Turkey. I mean, this is me being naive. It's so close. You can imagine these people being stranded in Turkey and seeing how close Greece is, and just wanting to get in a boat and to escape, to move on, to get into Europe. You can feel the urgency of that journey. And the other thing that I felt driving along that road and walking and having, being on the beach where there are many boats just left and dinghies that have been sort of stripped and left, and piles of rubbish and piles of life jackets. It's a scene of trauma, there's no doubt. And I felt the heaviness. I felt the heaviness of the land, that the land is absorbing the trauma of these people, of these refugees, but also of the people, of the volunteers, but also particularly the people who live here. That this is their home, and not that they don't feel safe, but that they've lost some ownership of their home. And even though they feel for the refugees and they are wanting to support the refugees, it's still been a year of so much challenge and so much change, and seeing others, going through a traumatic experience. I think it's really taken its toll on the people here, and certainly talking with Evie, I really felt that, and the heaviness of it. So, gosh, only been here literally 24 hours, and I'm just feeling very, very mixed feelings, really, and pondering on what my contribution is, and wanting to be very clear that I'm actually bringing something rather than taking. And I'm sure, tomorrow morning we meet with the Starfish Foundation, which is who we're linked with, and they have rotas, and hopefully, or presumably, we will get some idea of what we're going to be doing over the next few days, and we may ultimately move. We may not stay where we are right now. We need to be where the need is greatest. So yeah, that's it for tonight. You can probably hear in my voice, and saying so much that feels like, I have stepped into another world, a totally different experience, which one would anticipate if you go to the other side of the world. But actually, we're in Greece. It's Europe, and it just feels so. It feels people here feel very exposed and very vulnerable, and that's going to be really interesting. And what I'm really appreciating is just speaking with people about their experience, and waiting to see, how that's going to unfold. So catch up with you soon, and no doubt more will unfold. So much love to everyone, and feeling the support. So thank you so much.